I would like to say that you should all be smarter, but I don't know how to be could be smarter. We don't know anything how to improve intelligence, and suppose we don't really know anything about how to improve industriousness either. But I can tell you that people who are industrious come up with a strategy for solving the problem that's ahead of them. If you want to know something about yourself, you sit on your bed one night and say to yourself, you got to be in this, like you this way, this no game, this. What's one thing I'm doing wrong? That no, I'm doing wrong. That good fish. That good fish. You meditate on that, you get an answer, and it won't be one you watch, but it will be the necessary one. In this video, we explore some of his best kept secret for maximizing focus and achieving long-term success, so that you can study smarter, not harder. Now, often people to fix the thing you repeat every day. Because people tend to think of those things as travel, right? You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, and have your routine that you go through every day, where there's no probably constitute 50% of your life. And we will think, well, they are mundane and don't need to pay attention to them. No, no, that's exactly wrong. The thing you do every day doesn't the most important thing you do. Hence now, all you have to do is to do the arithmetic. We make an average of 35,000 decisions every single day. Which can eventually lead to decision fatigue, as that mental overload that can impair a person's ability to continue making decisions. As by psychologist Dr. Lisa Mann explained, the more decision you have to know what make the more fatigue you develop and the more difficult it can become. This mental exhaustion can lead to poor choices, procrastination, or even a tendency to avoid this decision altogether. One effective way to reduce decision fatigue is by simplifying daily routine instead of blending meal in advance, maintaining a consistent wardrobe, or establishing structural habits. Additionally, breaking down complex choices into smaller, measurable steps can make decision making feel less overwhelming. Habit individual could set mental energy for more important tasks. I can tell you that people who are industrious come up with a strategy for solving the problem that help them, and then they do whatever they can to stick to the strategy so that excellent. Example, if you sat down today or tomorrow for a couple of hours, 3 hours, you fill in a Google Calendar, whatever you happen to use with a strategy for studying, and a list of when all your assignments are due and all that. When you going to sit down and study, then you won't be in a position where you cram for 10 hours a day, absolutely right before no one important exam. It's also a very ineffective way of studying by the misaffortable who cram for 10 hours. They study for 10 hours, but they are really wake up because I can study for 10 hours. I don't have the power of concentration that will enable me to do that for a long period of time. I can manage about 3 hours of intense intellectual activity before ready done. A study group in frontiers in human neuroscience found that by learning, we study sessions are spread over time can be twice as effective as smart learning. This role enhances memory retention and recall by encoding information into long-term memory. Research consistently show that students who spend out their study perform better on assessment taken weeks later compared to those who cram. In addition to by learning, getting enough sleep plays a crucial role in learning and memory. According to the Sleep Foundation, sleep deprivation hinders the brain ability to create new pathways for recently learned information, making it harder to retain knowledge. And it also the case that if you study and then sleep and then study and then sleep and then study and then sleep, you stay down, then you're much more likely to remember. It is so much more likely that you are much more likely to remember if you try to recall the material, and so highlighting in that sort of thing isn't very useful, but reading closing the book, summarizing what you read without opening that book, that's useful. And the reason for that reason is you were practicing remembering, and that's what you have to practice. If you're practicing memorization, you have to practice remembering. You don't just go over anything you over. That will help you with recognition memory, but it won't help you with recall memory. The best thing you can do is read and write every day. Couple hours every day. Write about things you find important and see if you can discover what you believe to be true. And that will your foundation. And it's unbelievably practical. Research believed by Jackson V. was that Brigham Young University explore reading literary fiction enhance personality to understand others' skill well that a terror of mind. This refers to the human capacity to recognize that others have belief and desire desire different from their own in the study. Participants were divided to group and state different reading material afterward. They took a test measuring their ability to perceive other emotion. The results saw that those who read during fiction score significantly higher than those who read it not read at all. So what seems to happen is stories that they distill. So they watch people watch people, and then they tell story about what they see. But they live a lot of hours. Those story, everything that's boring, hopefully. And then more and more story about certain knowledge or certain things get soft or aggravated when maybe a writer come along and write something really interesting about writer self formations, and then you say, well, that's fiction, and you say, well, that's not true because it's fiction. But then maybe that's not right. Maybe it's more than true. Because who wants the truth? The truth is mundane reality, and you already got as matter. What you got, one is the distillation of interesting experiences, and you might think, well, already interesting, well, the answer is you don't know. That's the thing that's so cool. Wait till about behavior, you tend to think about voluntary behavior with a motivation to stay with this habit. Actually, depending on the situation, autonomic response. For example, when you food the brain and you start to think about food and start to organize your behavior toward food as and to perceive the world that way study and everybody are separate bear for food, and so it's useful to think about motivated study and a micro personality. A connection article from Connection Today tells us the scientific truth behind the physics to you make a mental memory and actual reason second neurocycle so they have different driving dynamics. This phenomenon is explained by Snap law, which states that neurons that fire together wire together. In other words, if you do something in association with something else, the truth is you will get interline at the neural level. This principle highlights the brain's ability to stronger neural connection through repetition and association. For example, if someone repeatedly visualizes themselves speaking confidently in a public, the brain starts to reinforce the same neural pathways used in actual public speaking, emotionally improving their real-life performance. Even when you're just walking to where you want to go, if you're successfully walking in there, your brain chart what you're doing. There are cells that are activated while you are doing it, and when you're doing with self-edit, with self-you desire. Then the dopamine flows those little neurons that are active and need magnum grow and progress. And so, as you practice something, that working the second let's say is activated as you are practicing, it's about the dopamine that make it stronger. Let's feel good. It's growth. It's part of workout state emotion, and if you state motion move, encourage you to develop a habit of practice that practice so one takes a word really where I say it don't matter habit of pushing thing are gonna do for you because you build that into that what happened is become addicted to something you build a little monster inside you that grow is there's a one after one goal despite everything else it's not a good outcome. In order to withstand suffering, let's say he like has to set some meaning. Okay, well, what does it mean? A bunch of things. It means that part of way to have overcoming suffering is by making the suffering into something meaningful. And I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean it technically. You make it a mistake, it costs you suffering, you learn up something about. You don't make the mistake again. And I started as bishop working with children and should be a participant researcher. For that, those encouraged to embrace discomfort, feel create a sense of achievement and were more likely to include investigationally into their daily life compared to those who simply successful focus on the task. Perceiving negative experience as a self or success is particularly motivating when we step a veteran or delay and discomfort is immediate. This allows a suffering and is in likewise let something goes you wrong. Who cares? Let's make you suffer. Who cares? So you know if you run our little scheme the little action button you do it. But if you are if you are choose your opportunity and quiet and what is that? It's you don't know what you don't know where you are and you don't know what you are doing.